Good morning, everybody. My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. Hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend. I decided to pop on here and give this topic a little bit of light. Seeing that we all struggle from this at one point in our lives, or we've known somebody struggle with the abusive nature of others. I want to tell you that I've yet to go over this video. So if it has any disturbing triggering effects on you, if you suffer from abuse or any kind of domestic violence or anything in the past. Um, I hope that you either speak about it in the chat or, feel free to exit if you wish, because I don't want anything to be triggered. And like I said, I've yet to look at this video, so hopefully it's something that's informational and not anything that is triggering. And one of the reasons that I wanted to show this is because I am a survivor of abuse myself, childhood instances, and it led into a lot of PTSD in my life. So um, it did mess with my ability to function in life. So it does have a place close to my heart. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I do not only speak on these things, but I've also experienced these things in my life from time to time. So we will not be having any panel guests other than myself today. Um, I'm going to be the only one really speaking on this, so I hope that you enjoy that. So here we go. Let's listen.
Even if you think you know this case, prepare yourself for shock.
See, this is your life. You're gonna fight for your family. You want to send me somewhere or not? What do you want to do? You want to give up? You want to whine and moan? Well, what is it? Yes or no?
Protect me from you, my
Say
dear.
it like you mean it.
It's getting later and it's harder to live. I'm trying to heal. I'm trying to make.
I forgot. I don't know.
Someone please come to my defense.
How many times do you think I want to tell you to look in my eyes, huh?
Someone please come to my defense.
Rochelle Neve was 3 when she and her siblings were heavily abused by their mother. She was also 3 when her 6-year-old brother Ricky was murdered by a teenager from the local area. These are traumatic enough experiences for anyone to be put through. Awful things that one might assume are best experienced while young enough to forget they ever even happened. But is not remembering really the same thing as never happening? And do children actually remember much from the age of 3 and under? Well, ask yourself, what do you remember from when you were 3 years old?
I am going to be sharing a little bit about my life during this video, so I don't want you to take it as me just high-siding or, trying to put myself on a pedestal out there. But my first memory of anything was about probably 4.5, 5 years old. And anything before then, I really don't remember. I mean, I don't remember a lot of my childhood from probably 5 to 12. And I don't know if anybody has ever suffered any kind of emotional, physical, spiritual abuse. And if you have, my heart goes out to you because I can relate to that. So here we go.
Mostly happy memories? Mostly traumatic experiences? Do you remember anything? Recently, the question was raised about the legitimacy of an adult's testimony according to their early childhood memories. And by early, I mean within the first few years of life. Let's say birth to 3 years old. You see, I wonder how much memory can be recalled during this time period, later on in a kid's grown-up life. This is something I truly seek to understand better. But just how early childhood experiences begin to define us as adults is really what piques my interest. In the late 1980s, clinical psychologist Dr. Ken McGitt, who specializes in dealing with heavily abused children, videotaped a therapy session with a 6-year-old girl named Beth Thomas. You may have heard about her in YouTube videos often titled Psychopathic Evil Little Girl or something of that nature. Beth had been so badly abused within the first 19 months of her life that she couldn't bond with others. She was also unable to give or receive love, let alone display any trace of a conscience. It seemed like the little girl had absolutely no remorse for any of her actions.
So I want you to kind of listen to what's said about this little girl, because I've seen her thumbnails in the YouTube recommendations. I think one of them said the world's most evil child or something like this, or a person. And I mean, I can understand how you would have no real connection with anything if all you experience is hurt from anything that comes close to you. What do y'all think about that? There's a lot of analytical people in the chat right now. What do y'all think about that?
She and her little brother were adopted by a Methodist minister named Tim Tennant and his wife Julie Tennant. The couple were unable to have kids of their own, so in February of 1984, they decided to adopt Beth and her brother John from social services. Beth was roughly a year and a half, while John was around 7 months old. Tim and Julie were both led to believe that the kids they were adopting were two healthy and mentally sound children. The Tennants just wanted to share the love they had to offer with someone. They felt like they wanted to raise kids that they could pass everything on to when they pass away. So when they got the call about Beth and John, it was a dream come true, and one that came quicker than expected. People can wait up to 10 years to adopt a child, yet miraculously, they were being offered two while seemingly getting to skip the queue. But just months into the adoption, Tim and Julie's dreams were swiftly shattered as soon as it became apparent that 19-month-old Beth and her little brother John were not normal kids. They had serious problems their new parents weren't aware of, problems specifically affecting the behavior of Beth. As the Tennants began to ask questions as to the origins of Beth's actions, they made a startling discovery.
You know, there's an age-old adage that says hurt people. And there's a reason that that's said. Because you know what? Hurt people don't really understand that they're hurting people. To them, it's just a survival tactic.
Beth and John's early life greeted them with nothing but suffering. Their mom had a kidney disease and was constantly in the hospital. She would end up dying when Beth was about 1, leaving the children in the exclusive care of their biological father. It seems clear to me that the abuse started before this tragic event, but I think it seriously ramped up its intensity after Beth lost her mother. When social services stepped into the picture, allegedly following a report by a doctor, the neglect and abuse they discovered was haunting.
He's an intelligent child and a very attractive one. But Philippe is a problem. At school, at home, to himself. Philippe is an overly aggressive child. What can be done? We can say, oh, this is just a phase, he'll outgrow it. Or we can recognize that he needs help and that something can be done to help him.
John was found in a bassinet, covered in urine and feces. His diaper hadn't been changed in days. There was a bottle at his feet that contained curdled milk. The back of 7-month-old John's head was flat and oddly shaped due to him never being lifted or moved. The front of his head had become bulged. The poor boy couldn't raise his head, let alone roll over on his own. Tim described John as a child who simply had no stimulation whatsoever. But Beth's behavior in Tim and Julie's house was the catalyst to discovering what was really happening to John. Beth's disturbing actions seemingly began when she started targeting pets and other animals she came into contact with. According to her, she had 4 domesticated animals at the time: Clyde, Shuggy, Darcy, and a dog named Annie. 6-year-old Beth openly discusses with Dr. Majid just what she does to the animals in her company.
So we've heard that, amongst other other individuals that have issues with becoming involved in killing people. Oftentimes, they're very harmful towards animals and small living things. There was a case the other night that I presented where the individual would take kittens and squirrels and everything else and put them in a microwave and watch them die. I mean, if you have any kind of people in your life that exhibit this type of behavior and have kind of like a jokingly or laughingly attribution to it, you might look a little deeper into their psyche.
No one's looking.
Do you have animals, Beth?
4 of them.
And what do you do to the animals, Beth?
Stick them with pins.
Do you stick them a little bit or a lot?
A lot.
What are you trying to do to the animals, Beth?
Kill them.
What do they do when you stick them with the pins?
Well, Annie cries. She's a dog.
She got baby birds down out of the nest, and we thought maybe she was just curious. So we explained that she could hurt them, put them back, and went through a whole sitting down and talking to her about the problem of it. And the next day we went out to check the baby birds, and they were on the ground dead with their necks broken.
Let's talk about what happened once when you were smaller, when you found some baby birds in a tree. What did you do then?
I took them out.
Mm-hmm. And what did Mom say to you?
That the mother will not come back if somebody touches her baby.
Mm-hmm. Are the baby birds kind of small? Can you describe them for me?
Well, they don't have their eyes open, but they can hear me, and they look up.
Are they kind of helpless? Little baby birds? Can they fly?
No.
Can they run away?
Yes.
They can? Are they easy to catch or hard to catch?
Hard.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to remember. With the baby birds, what did you do?
Took them out of the tree.
And what did you do with them?
Played around too rough. Also, one at the end.
Do you think this little girl understands the severity of what she did? Do you really think that she understands that she could have played a little too rough with these birds, or do you think that she intentionally meant to harm them? Tell me what you think.
I picked it up and I thought it was Dad, and I came to say, Mommy, is this bird dead? And she said, she called Daddy and said, Tim, and Daddy came and I think I remember that they said yes.
Mm-hmm. And so did the little baby birds die?
I don't know.
You don't remember?
I just remember that I remember that Mommy and Daddy said the last bird we got was dead.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what Mom said to me? She said that all of them were dead. Did you squeeze them? Did Baby Beth squeeze them? You're doing a good job, honey. Go ahead and tell me what happened.
I squeezed them.
And what happened?
They died.
It's chilling to see a 6-year-old go from pure forgetful denial to complete admission of guilt without so much as a second thought. Beth's attempts to mislead Dr. McGitt are poorly invested in. It's like the very second she realizes he's not buying it, she completely confesses to avoid the hassle of manipulation. A new disturbing bar was set when the little girl started exhibiting uncontrollable urges to masturbate. If Tim and Julie weren't fully aware that Beth had severe psychological problems before, They certainly were when they discovered her sexual promiscuity, behavior it appeared that linked back to a recurring nightmare Beth had frequently. Only her looping dream of terror was based on true events caused by her birth father.
The nightmare was about a man who was falling on her and hurting her with a part of himself.
She started to masturbate at inappropriate times. I remember one time when we were at the hospital waiting for Tim to come out. He was there visiting, and Beth and John were in the back seat, and I turned around, and she had her legs spread and was masturbating in a public parking lot. And I had tried to explain to her numerous times before that's private area. You don't do it in public places. And gone over that with her, and it never seemed to faze her.
At 6 years old, why would you even excuse that? Like, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but what do y'all think about that? I mean, that seems kind of young to be doing that, especially being an exhibitionist of that sort.
And
Julie, how often would your daughter masturbate?
daily, constantly.
Have you ever rubbed your private parts?
Mm-hmm.
Do you do it a lot?
A lot.
How much do you do that?
About every single day, and that's into. I did it every single day until it got real bad and messed up, and I had to go to the doctor, and I did not like it.
What do you mean by real bad?
Well, it looked real raw, got all kinds of boo-boos on it, germs, a lot of stuff from my hand.
And it bled?
Mm-hmm.
But herself and animals are not the only thing that Beth took her rage out on. She not only desired to cause the deaths of Tim and Julie, but she desperately wanted to kill her little brother Jonathan. It shakes my soul to hear this poor 6-year-old, loveless little human describe these awful and undeserving things with such emotionless detail. She was only 19 months old when it stopped. 1 year and 7 months. There was no one to love her, and she never saw anyone be loved. To 6-year-old Beth Thomas, love simply didn't exist.
And I'm going to share a little bit of stuff with you that I've worked through in therapy. I had later identified in therapy that, there's a reason why you detach from people that tend to want to love you. One of the reasons is because you don't understand that level of attachment. If you've been raised in a household where there's a lot of chaos, a lot of dysfunctional activity, there's a lot of abuse, there's a lot of things that seem horrendous to other people if they were to walk in and look at your life, but to you, you get to a point where that's normal. That is normal behavior. That is normal things that you view to replicate in your own life once you leave that environment. Because once the abuse stops, many people pick it back up, whether it be with substances, whether it be with their own physical abuse or getting in an abusive relationship or getting in high-risk behaviors, because whenever you're used to this type of environment, you don't know how to interact if the environment is not volatile, violent, chaotic, dysfunctional. If somebody tells you, stay still, just sit there and stay still and try to relax, and you've been raised in an environment like this, you don't know how to do it. If you pluck someone right out of that environment and you're trying to show them love, or you're trying to show them that they don't have to hurt themselves, a lot of times they fight you. They fight you. And this is how it changes from a child who grows up into an adult. Because you can say, well, why did she do that? Why did she hurt herself? Why did she hurt the animals? Well, to her, hurt was normal. And that's what a lot of people don't understand in the true crime community. They say that people hurt or kill people or rape people because they view it as something that's hurting the other person. But to a lot of these individuals, that is normality. To hurt somebody, to kill somebody, to rape somebody is normal in their mindset. It's not abnormal. The way that society views things, the normality of it all, is abnormal to them. So that's why they a lot of times don't have empathy. They don't have the emotional attachment to even understand that they have the capacity to hurt somebody. You know, that's where the narcissism comes from. That's why, all these other things, where it comes from. Let's continue on. I know this is a hard video to watch because it involves children, but it's replicating a lot of truth here because whether somebody comes from this environment or whether they don't, to this severity, any kind of severity in the child rearing years can deter someone from being quote unquote normal to being lack of empathy, manipulative, lying, devious, violent individual. I mean, it's been proven time and time again in psychological experiments. So I'm not making this stuff up. Okay, so let's continue on. Like I said, it's better for you to release your thoughts in the chat and to release your feelings on this in the chat, because the more people that are here can say, hey, we understand, we're here for you. If you've experienced it or you're mad or you're angry, it's okay to say it. Don't run off with these feelings, because if you're having these feelings of any sort, you either have seen it be done or you've lived through it yourself and you've never worked through it, or it's triggering you once you work through it and you're understanding that maybe I might need a little more work. This is not a counseling group, so don't think that it is. I'm just offering a place where you can speak freely. And it's always beneficial to be able to get your thoughts out. And I appreciate those of you that are sharing your thoughts and opinions in the chat. Thank you so much. I know it's not easy.
And in place of love, she was forced to experience this.
Tell me about your birth father. What was that nightmare like?
When he touched my vaginas
Okay.
until it bled, hurted a lot until it bled, and wouldn't feed me a lot. He'd hit on me, wouldn't be very nice to me.
How old were you?
1.
And in your nightmare, what happens?
I get real scared.
Where are you in the nightmare? What happens in the dream?
I'm in the house, upstairs.
And then what happens, Beth?
When he comes upstairs and hurts.
How do you feel when you talk about this?
Scared.
Beth is recalling trauma from the age of 1. This trauma has completely infected and consumed her life, as you're about to see, and she absolutely remembers some of it. You may say, but Mr. Black, maybe someone told Beth her history. Well, I don't doubt that as a possibility that's probable, but when they show her childhood drawings on the screen, I think it becomes all the more evident that Beth Thomas is definitely recalling her past.
Where's your birth father? What's he doing?
He's right there, and there's his hand. His hand's right there.
Where?
Right there. You can't hardly see it because it's green.
What's it touching?
My vaginas.
And what is your birth father doing?
Hurting it.
Your face looks sad. Can you tell me about that?
It's crying because there's dots of the tears.
When Jonathan started waking up screaming in tears at night, complaining about his stomach, the tenants couldn't figure out why their adopted son was in such pain. But quickly, the cause of his agony was discovered. John wasn't sick, and he wasn't having nightmares. He was literally being attacked in his sleep.
But this kind of aggression at our animals and even at our brother Jonathan was beginning to grow to such an excess that our life was miserable at home. John would cry in the mornings and say his stomach hurt. For the longest time, we thought maybe this child has some problem with his intestinal area, or maybe he has allergies, and so we tried to get all that checked out. Come to find out, Beth was coming out of her room and hitting him in the stomach. And so as a last resort, just to protect him, we had to tie our door shut. So I guess for the last 3 or 4 months now, we've had to tie her in at night.
Are people afraid of you, Beth?
Uh-huh.
Did y'all just hear that? She would punch her little brother in the stomach as he walked out the door. So they had to, protect the little boy from her. I thought maybe the parents were doing something to him, but come to find out it was Beth that was punching him in the stomach. Wow.
Who's afraid of you, Beth?
John.
Your brother. And why is your brother afraid of you?
Because I hurt him so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And at nighttime, what do your parents do to your door?
Lock it shut.
Why do they lock it shut?
Because they don't want me to hurt John.
Right. And
I support you guys for your strength to be able to talk about this in the chat. I know it's not easy, but you're right. You are in a different place now, and you're able to protect yourself, And you're right, Chick. Not every abused person becomes an abuser. Sometimes they do pick abusive situations to hurt themselves, though, so they're not hurting themselves. You're totally right on that.
And they're kind of afraid of hurting John? Of you hurting John?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are they afraid that you might hurt them?
Yep.
Would you, Beth?
Mm-hmm.
When would you do it?
Nighttime.
Okay. Why would you do nighttime?
Because I don't like them seeing me do it. But they can tell me do it.
Mm-hmm. And what would you do to him, Beth?
Stab him.
Okay. What would you stab him with?
A knife.
Do you ever stick pins in people?
Mm-hmm.
Who?
My brother.
Okay. Do you do it a little bit or a lot?
A lot.
Okay. And what are you trying to do to your brother?
Kill him.
Why do you want your brother to die?
Because I was hurt so bad, and I don't want to be around people.
Okay. Who else would you like to stick pins into?
Doesn't she sound like a grown-up when she's describing this? It's almost like she's 6 years old, but she has the ability to demonstrate her wording to the point where it almost sounds adult-like. It's intense.
Mommy and Daddy.
What would you like to have happen to them?
Die.
Does your brother have private parts?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is his private parts?
Penis and butt.
Mm-hmm. And what do you do with his private parts, Beth?
I heard it.
Tell me about it. What do you do?
Now, I pinch it. Squeeze it. Kick it.
When you do things to your brother's private parts, what does he say?
Stop.
Okay, tell me that.
Well, he says stop, but I don't stop.
Do you hurt him?
A lot.
Okay. And would you like to do that to other boys?
When I caught her with Jonathan one morning, she was molesting him. He was crying and his pants were down, and I said, Beth, what's happening? And she said, I pulled his penis and put my finger up his anus. And I said, didn't he say to stop? And she said, yeah, he did. And I said, did you? And she said, no.
She had tried to kill John on several occasions and openly admitted that.
In the basement, she was hitting.
I agree with you, Truth, wholeheartedly. I agree with your statement wholeheartedly. I believe that that's probably exactly what was going on. The dad was more for her to overpower, and the little boy was not. So she was getting revenge on the little boy, not only due to his gender, but the fact that he resembled the father. These two are the adoptive parents. These aren't the biological. So if you're wondering why they're so lackadaisious about it, they're the adopted parent. They're not the biological.
His head against a cement floor. I heard his screams and ran down and had to literally pull her hands off, and she looked wild-eyed.
Did you get real mad at him? Did you hit his head real hard? Tell me about it. How many times did you do it? A lot? What was the floor like?
Cement.
And what happened to your brother? Tell me about it.
His head hurt real bad, but his chin, he had to have stitches in it.
Could you stop? Use your words, Beth.
No.
Okay. What was your brother doing when you were doing this?
Playing with the toys.
Okay. Was he asking you to stop when you were doing it? What was he saying?
He said, Beth, stop.
And what did you do?
I didn't stop. I just kept on hurting him.
What were you thinking when you were doing that?
Thinking of killing him.
How did you stop? What made you stop?
When I heard Peter walking across the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
it made me stop because I thought Mommy and Daddy would come.
Okay. Did Mommy come? What did she do?
She sent me to my room.
Okay.
It might be nothing, just a stumble, but I swear that in that moment, you can hear it in his voice when Dr. Magid becomes overwhelmed by Beth's story.
And what if Mom didn't stop you? What would you have done?
Kept on doing it.
This is what zero love looks like when it's worn by a child that's been abused. From birth to 5 years old, a child's brain develops more then than any other time in their lives. It seems likely that Beth's trauma may have left her with psychopathy. I mean, seems pretty clear, right? It's hard not to characterize Beth's behaviors as psycho. And one of the likely risk factors of becoming psychopathic is early exposure to a dysfunctional environment. According to verywellfamily.com,
children who have been physically abused, neglected, and separated from their parents are more likely to develop psychopathy. Poor bonding with a parent is also thought to be a factor.
The study relies.
I can relate to this because, even though I was raised by both parents, I would have a grandma and an aunt. And, being young, you don't know you're being abused. You don't know that you're being beaten or anything like that. And if my parents seem to watch this, I'm not meaning any kind of shade. I've forgiven you and I've forgiven the past. And we're better now. But, when things like that is going on, you really don't understand what's going on. And I used to hug my mom, and I would not feel any kind of connection whatsoever. I would hug my dad. I would not feel any kind of connection. Like it was almost like hugging the air. It was like hugging a stranger, somebody who you don't really connect with, like, but hugging my grandma, hugging my aunt, it was like I could feel that connection because there was no fear involved. And, it's it's a terrible feeling. But now when I hug my mom, there's that connection. We've connected. We've learned to work past all the issues, and my dad as well. And we're great. We're as good as can be at this point. But growing up, there's a lot of things that go on that sometimes you wonder if you'll ever get to the point of being able to care for anybody or anything. And there was a lot of dissociation in my life. There was a lot of dissociation with people, places, and things where I couldn't connect to anybody very long. Everything was very short lived and disposable. I didn't trust. I wasn't honest. I lied. I manipulated. And as I've told you guys, I've stole hearts. I stole love. I stole all this stuff. The one thing that I wanted the most was the one thing that I destroyed the most when it was given to me because I didn't know how um, how to accept it, how to let it come in. And, I hope that kind of illustrates a little bit. I'm not saying that I identify with this little girl because I don't, not to this extreme, but I do identify to a certain extreme of it.
On callous unemotional, or the CU scale, to rate a child's behavior. The children used in the study were all between the ages of 2 and 4 years old, and the scale was based on 5 simple statements. Number 1, your child doesn't seem guilty after misbehaving. Number 2, punishment doesn't change your child's behavior. Number 3, your child is selfish or won't share. Number 4, your child lies. Number 5, your child is sneaky and tries to get around you. Later on in life, when the kids from the study were 9, they were tested again and discovered that the children who rated poorly on the CU scale were the ones who were most likely to later show signs linking them to psychopathy. It's important to remember that there is no real psychopath test for kids, only tools for assessment or measuring. Another quote from verywellfamily.com says,
Poor bonding with a parent is also thought to be a factor. A parent with mental health issues or substance abuse problems, or one with little contact with an infant, for example, may never bond with a child. Children who have inconsistent caregivers may also be unable to successfully attach to an adult.
So let me give you a little test here for those of you in the chat. What's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath? We've gone over this in other lives, so I want to see if y'all remember, because there's a lot of you that are in here that have been in those other lives. This is a very interesting study. That's why I chose it. I didn't choose it for the shock value of this person or her life. I chose it because it's a learning tool for other people and things like that, So what's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath, and which one is more dangerous?
Hell, even breastfeeding is touted to help reduce the risk of unwanted antisocial behaviors in a child. With all these things taken into consideration, it's no wonder Beth acted the way she did. It was the only thing she'd ever learned. She was clearly exhibiting psychopathic behavior, but Beth was not a psychopath. Beth was experiencing something that we'll talk about in a bit. People often think that the opposite of love is hate. But I think rage is a pretty good contender as an opposing emotional force. It's a fellow 4-letter word that typically carries the same red-shaded intensity that love does. Beth Thomas was filled with rage, and it seemed like her predatory nature was turning into some kind of twisted game in her mind. But when knives went from Tim and Julie's kitchen, The family realized that Beth was truly capable of evil.
Well, I noticed several, like paring knives in the kitchen missing. And my first thought was Beth. And I felt a little guilty about it at first. I thought, nah. But I really didn't even mention it to her. They had been gone several weeks. She was sitting at the table drawing and mentioned to me, "What do those knives look like that are gone, Mom?" And I said, "What knives, Beth?" And she said, "Weren't they kind of silver and about this big?" And I knew then, and then this little smile that's not a sweet smile, but a malicious type of smile. And I knew then, I thought, she's got them.
Tell me about the knives. Where did you get them?
From the drawer.
And where else? Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about it.
I got them from the dishwasher.
What kind of knives?
Big sharp ones.
And what do you want to do with those knives?
Kill John and Mommy with them, and Daddy.
And when Mommy asks you about where the knives are, what do you say?
I don't know where.
So at this point, she has a plan to kill her little brother and her mom and dad, her stepmom and dad, the fostered mom and dad. So, like they said, she has a sense of rage that as a child, she doesn't know how to release that other than hurting people, hurting animals, hurting herself. And people say, well, why can't they just stop? Because that rage never goes away. That's one thing that I hope that you guys understand as well, is if this little girl has that much rage without any help interjecting with those thoughts, those emotions, those urges, as she grows up, that fire is going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. It doesn't go away just because you're exposed to more things and you think, well, she was exposed to good people. How come she didn't turn into a good person? Because she doesn't have an understanding of attachment to good things. She only knows the other side of the coin. And you say, well, how can she not be taught? Because it takes a lot of work to undo damage from the very beginning of life. It just doesn't happen overnight. And that's why individuals are so complex when it comes to serial killers and killers, rapists, and all these other things. They say, well, they did it because they enjoyed it. They generalize it so much that it just happened because of this. We really don't know the long line of dysfunction that they grew up in, or maybe it wasn't dysfunctional. Maybe it was something else, a mental health issue. But most killers that we've identified do not have mental health problems. So this little girl had a personality disorder, it sounded like.
They are.
In April of 1989, Beth was moved to a place that was designed to help children with attachment disorders. Children like Beth. But this would be no easy road to recovery. The children in this home are a danger to themselves and society. If these kids don't get the help they need, the chances of them hurting or killing someone is extremely high. Nancy Thomas explains this in a chilling way.
I have children that have killed numerous times. Cold-blooded family members, neighbor children killed them. And they can do it. Makes my blood run cold just thinking about 9 years old. People don't think a 9-year-old is capable of cold-blooded murder, but they are. That attachment break does severe damage to the heart, the ability to care and the ability to love. If they don't care and they don't love, they're capable of anything.
So what condition did Beth have? She's not a psychopath, and she isn't considered evil. So what exactly is wrong with this 6-year-old? Well, Beth Thomas has something called reactive attachment disorder, or RAD, which in short is a collection of symptoms or behaviors rooted in a child that has often been passed around from home to home, where they missed out on affection by way of a primary caregiver. Abuse and neglect are also prime catalysts for RAD. Beth Thomas had experienced all of the above. So how do you fix a child with reactive attachment disorder? Well, Nancy Thomas explains how.
We're very strict about everything. Everything is completely monitored. We take complete control because a child who's unattached does not trust. And because they don't trust, they don't allow anybody to be boss of them. So we take complete control. They are not boss of anything. They have to ask to get a drink of water. They have to ask to go to the bathroom. They have to ask to leave our sight. Part of that is because we cannot trust them because of the damage that they've done before.
Beth, would you like to say grace, please?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this good day and everybody doing good. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. They believe that they're evil. They believe they're from the devil. They believe that they are not a person of value. And we have to change that. And we have to build that from a child who's nothing, who's a bad kid in their own mind, to a child who's valuable and loving, and they see themselves as that.
You don't have to bite this.
When they do a chore well, we can say, you did a good job, you're a good worker. And then it just builds that self-esteem little by little so that they change the way that they see themselves.
Several months into treatment in this controlled environment, Beth had made progress, and her therapist decided to loosen some of the controls.
Anybody wants some more? I've seen that.
Beth continued to show signs of improvement. She began to develop a sense of right and wrong. She seemed to respond to affection, was more outgoing.
Gosh, you don't have to like.
She went to public school, made friends at the local church, and even sang in the choir.
And you're going to go into Sunday school again this morning?
Yeah.
Get sticker. In the beginning, we couldn't trust her with anything. She was locked up at night. We had alarms on the door at night, so she wasn't sneaking around doing things with the other children. We don't worry about that anymore. There's no alarm on her door at night now. She sleeps in the same room with my own daughter, and I trust her that much. She brushes the dogs, and I trust her that much. Because she has earned that trust. She's learned it. She has a heart, and she has a love inside, and she feels bad when she does something now. In the past, because she didn't have a conscience, she didn't feel anything when she did something bad. There was just no feeling there. And now she does feel bad, and it shows in her face.
And you know, it's scary when you go from one extreme to the other. It's like you're not used to feeling anything like that. And then all of a sudden you start thawing out, so to speak, and you start attaching with things and people. And it's overwhelming because every little thing seems to hurt. And that's where the therapy comes in. That's where the love, the guidance, the positive affirmation, that's where all that comes in. And I'm glad to see that this little girl was able to turn it around. I always like a comeback story, because this is a hard one. This is a hard story. But I like a good comeback story like this,
I believe that Beth can make it. She's got a really bright mind. She's got a good heart now, which has done a lot of healing. She's got a really super set of parents. They're powerful, they're knowledgeable, they're motivated. She's done a lot of good work with you in therapy, with Cannell and with myself. She wants to heal, and that's the number one key. And she wants to heal because she has a family that really cares about her, and she wants to be with them.
Aww. Do you know where that anger came from?
That's when my birth dad hurt me. I had it all inside, and I remembered it, and I started doing it.
And what did that do when it was inside?
It made me want to hurt people really bad.
And who did you hurt?
My brother, my mom and dad, and the animals.
Who did it hurt the most?
My brother.
Who did it hurt the most?
Me.
don't you tell me that?
It hurt me the most.
How did it hurt you the most?
Because when I hurt other people, I'm hurting my good self.
How do you feel right now, Beth?
Sad.
It's kind of tough to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah.
The last time Beth was interviewed for the documentary was in 1989.
See, she wasn't able to cry when she was little at 6. And now she has that empathy in this interview where she's able to attach to those emotions that happened and her causing hurt. But it showed the growth she's made.
And while the documentary ended there, this is by no means the end of the story. For a long time, no one had really heard anything else from Beth, and Child of Rage was all anyone had to go on. Then in 2010, the publisher, Families by Design, released a book called Dandelion on My Pillow, Butcher Knife Beneath. It was written by Nancy, Tarina, and Beth Thomas. It features Beth's autobiography, which she wrote when she was 19, among stories of other disturbed children with attachment disorders. If you'd like to get Beth's book, you can find the link in the description of this video. After releasing the book, Beth disappeared from the internet, and as far as I can see, it would be 5 years before anyone would hear from Beth again. Then in 2015, during an interview on BBS Radio, a 32-year-old Beth Thomas was heard live online for what appears to be the first time in 30 years. During this interview, we find out that Beth and John were not the only children in the abusive household she was born into.
So what I was diagnosed with was reactive attachment disorder. And what reactive attachment disorder is, so it occurs in the first 3 years of life. And usually with the causes, they range from abuse, neglect, trauma, separation and loss, in utero trauma, such as drugs and alcohol abuse, ongoing pain, such as if a child is separated like from their family in that first few years of life and have to be hospitalized for an extended period of time, repeated moves such as foster care and being placed into different homes. And with me, what occurred is I was born into a very abusive home and environment. And then my birth mother died when I was 18 months old of kidney disease.
She has such a lovely smile. Look, her eyes have life in them. Wow.
So during that time, she was gone so much, going into the hospital and dialysis. And at that time, I had 6 other siblings. And then shortly after I was born, about a year after I was born, my little brother was born. So there were quite a few children in this home, and it was a very abusive environment, sadly, from my birth father. And then my birth mother died. So therefore, I had that separation and loss, the abuse, that neglect. And then what happened is it all kind of comes to, there's that first year cycle of life that when a child has a need, when a baby has a need, they cry. And that cry, if it's not taken care of right away, becomes rage because they're so helpless and hopeless because they cannot care for themselves. And so therefore, when that need is met and they get adequate gratification, then they learn to trust that caregiver, that provider, and establish a bond. And what happened is when I would have that need, that gratification didn't come, and therefore that trust was not established. And just to kind of talk about the symptoms of attachment disorder, it's important that, when a child is being diagnosed with attachment disorder, obviously that there's a clinician on board that is familiar with it for sure. But they usually they say, the symptoms, they should have at least half or more of those symptoms. One of the biggest symptoms is superficially engaging and charming. They are one person at home with their family, and they are someone completely different with someone else, if they recognize that they can con and manipulate that person that maybe has just walked into the room or their life, they could be seething anger, rage, and pain at their mom, because that pain is directed towards the maternal being, and they can turn it off and turn it back on in a heartbeat. Because they attachment disorder, it's an inability to give and receive affection.
So think about that. The inability to give and receive affection. She was able to get help. What if there's a lot of other Beth Thomases out there in the world, male and female, unable to accept and receive attachment, trust, love? And you have these individuals that are going around like a ball of fire. And they see a life they want, but could never have. They feel unattached to anything or anyone except including themselves. It's very scary to think about.
And they are indiscriminately affectionate. They have extreme control problems. I had extreme control problems, extremely sneaky, destructive to self and others. I was very abusive to my younger brother. We were adopted together, and I very quickly, from at 18 months, was already acting out on him and on my adoptive family at the time. Cruelty to animals is another one that's big on that. There are no impulse controls, chronic crazy lying, lack of conscience is huge on that. Persistent nonsense questions and chatter because they're trying to control the situation, they don't feel safe in the environment because the last environment they might have been in was an abusive and scary one. So they set their control, they control the situation so as to feel safe, that no one can hurt them again because they've already been hurt when they let their guard down. So there's a lot that's in regards to attachment disorder and how it obviously was reflected in me, and then how it affects who I am now. And what I do is after I healed from attachment disorder and going through intensive therapy to heal from that, I teach now about attachment disorder and how it was manifested in my life and how I healed and how others can heal too. And my goal is that there is hope provided in that. I became a nurse and I work in the neonatal ICU, and I'm also a neonatal flight nurse. And my goal with that is to try to break that cycle that so many can get caught up in, that teenage mom that comes in that has been in a life of abuse and then has this child, and to be able to help her recognize that she doesn't have to repeat that cycle that maybe she came from, that she can actually learn to connect and bond with her little child, with her baby, with whether it's premature or term, that she can actually learn to connect and rebuild that broken bond. The biggest thing is that, yes, I was younger when I went through my healing process. And I do feel like that somewhat helped because I was a little bit younger. But as my mom always says, if you're breathing, there's hope. As an adult, with someone that would be dealing with attachment disorder, in order for them to heal, the biggest thing is they have to recognize that there's even a problem, and then recognize that they want to heal. That, I think, is very difficult for many adults to do, to accept that there is a problem, and that's not something that is easy to be done. When I healed, and I went through through therapy during, intensive therapy during 6 to 8 years old, there was a time that I started to heal, and I could recognize that change, recognize that I had empathy and that I didn't want to disappoint.
Man, this is amazing. This is freaking amazing. Like, I'm sitting here just almost in tears because that is proof that change can happen. Look at this individual. You're telling me that there's people in life that don't believe in change, and they believe that they're the most outcast people, they're the most unlovable, they're the most hardcore. This individual right here is a walking testimony. Beth Thomas is an amazing person, and she turned her life around to help others in pretty much the same situation she grew up in. What do y'all think, chat? Is that not outstanding? Is that not wow? I am like almost in tears, and I don't cry. I don't.
Documentary Child of Rage, it's interesting. You can see in the beginning, if you listened and you watch it, you notice that there's no feeling or emotion behind some of the terrible things that I am saying. That's hallmark, that there was no empathy there. But as I heal, as Child of Rage shows the healing process, then you start to see me as I have that empathy, as I start to recognize the pain that I had caused. And that was a big part in turning the corner. When I was a little bit older, after that healing process, I was actually placed in a group home and a foster home for an amount of time. And while I was in the group home, there were times that I could be selfish or manipulative. But as I was able to get back into my family that helped me to heal, then I was able to feel safe and like I didn't have to be in control. And because I was placed back into my mom's home and had that consistency, I could relinquish that control because I was able to move forward. When I was 15, I did have some memories that came up in regards to abuse that had occurred to me, as well as reprocessing my childhood, but at a teenage level. And it was very difficult for me. And I became depressed, and I had some traumatic memories arise when I also started to date and realized that something was not right. And so I actually did EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, because it's very good with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And that was extremely helpful at that time in my life to help me kind of move past that. I think my teaching and watching Child of Rage, as often as I end up having to watch it because I show it before I teach, in its way has become very healing for me. The first time I ever spoke in front of an audience, I was 16 and I was terrified. I was completely terrified to get up and just air everything and have no skeletons in the closet and completely be open and honest about who I was, how far I'd come, how hard I'd worked, and the pain and trauma that I had caused to family in my life and to my little brother.
You too, Rhonda.
And I remember there was a family member, a mom, that came up to me after I spoke, and she said that my getting up there and sharing that story gave her hope that her child who had attachment disorder could someday heal. And that.
Oh my gosh. You know, the power of testimony. That's why I even started this channel. To give hope to people that otherwise do not recognize that there is a possibility of hope. Have a great day, Rondi. Be safe out there. You know, this is just perfect for a Sunday. I mean, because this is usually the type of stuff that I show on Sundays. Not the beginning, but the end. You know what I mean? So this is just amazing. I wish I could get in touch with her and have her on panel. Man.
Was eye-opening for me.
There's a dramatized made-for-TV type of movie that's based on Beth's early life. It's also called Child of Rage, but it's not to be confused with the documentary that actually features Beth herself. The film does a great job of depicting the struggles a family goes through when caring for a child with RAD. It's worth a watch, but in Beth's own words, parts of the movie have been quite Hollywoodized and some things just weren't accurate at all. But even with the film's inconsistencies, Beth further states that its intentions were essential to showcasing the kind of trauma she went through. One big question I found myself asking while researching this story and learning about RAD was, could attachment disorders have anything to do with the widespread violence we see in the world today? Well, Beth was actually asked this very same question during the 2015 radio interview.
That inability to give and receive affection, that inability to have empathy, that lack of conscience. I mean, some people, Ted Bundy, for example, had attachment disorder. If you go back and you look at his past and his childhood, he definitely has multiple causes and multiple signs and symptoms. Adolf Hitler was another one that definitely had attachment disorder. You look back at his Saddam Hussein. Helen Keller, actually, you look back at her history and her past, and how her physical disability also somewhat exacerbated that, because there was an inability to help rebuild that connection, and that was very difficult. And now she is one of our greatest humanitarians, thankfully, because of that person, by Anne Sullivan coming into her life and being able to provide that consistency and helping to rebuild that broken bond that had been established. But I do feel like that it's very important to recognize that someone that can go out and hurt somebody and have no remorse at all for what they're doing, that obviously is an individual that has been broken and does not know how to love and have empathy. And I do feel like we have a lot of that in our society, and you see that across the world. And as what's going on in Baltimore right now, it's devastating to me to see a world that has such potential for love to have such potential for hate too. It's heartbreaking to me.
Beth Thomas was 32 in 2015 when she did the interview. And while listening, I did pick up on something. There was a caller on the show that asked Beth a question, and throughout the whole show, there was only ever one caller. The woman that called in was introduced as Cindy initially, but she corrected the interviewer by claiming she was Nancy from Colorado. I think this would fly by most people, but because my mother's name is also Nancy, and I know Nancy Thomas as Beth's adopted mother, I began to wonder, was Nancy Colorado actually Nancy Thomas? When I compare the voice of Beth's second adopted mom from the documentary to the caller, it feels like I discovered an Easter egg. I believe the caller is Nancy Thomas. And when I checked Nancy's mental health service Facebook page, it also lists her as in Colorado. Nancy Thomas has a center designed to help kids like Beth recover. If the caller is Beth's adopted mom, Nancy, why the charades? Why the act?
Let's take a caller. We have a caller in Beth. This caller is Cindy calling in from Colorado. Cindy, are you there?
Hi, yeah, this is Nancy from Colorado.
Nancy, go ahead, Nancy.
Hi, I was just wondering what Beth would recommend that parents do to help their child when they have RAD.
I feel like it's very important that a family that has a child with reactive attachment disorder, that they definitely find someone, a therapist specifically, that specializes in attachment disorder to work with their family and with their child, and that they actually provide that consistency in their home and in consistency in school, that they help that child to have that external control so that therefore they can learn to have internal control. But it's very important that they definitely get the help that they need from someone who is an expert in attachment disorder.
Well, if they got their heart broken from not enough love, can the parents just love them and then they'll get better?
Definitely not. Sadly, love is not enough for a child with attachment disorder. I was definitely loved till as much love as possible could have been given to me. And that was something that sadly did not do the trick. Until I was able to have that empathy and be able to connect myself, there was no way to have that reciprocation.
Did you hear what she said? She said there's no amount of love that could have caused her to turn around. Love is not enough. And, oftentimes, if you've ever noticed that people that are dealing with drug addicts, alcoholics, people with rage or anger, or even this attachment disorder stuff, I don't know enough about it, and I'm curious now. I want to go learn more about it. People that have that in those other areas, people try to love them back into health. And I remember when I was getting sober, a lot of times people would tell me, hey, why can't you just accept our love and learn to love yourself? Why does it happen that way? It doesn't happen that way. I could not accept our love because I could not accept myself on my terms, and it's a very interesting topic, and I do want to learn more about it. And if there's anybody that would like to learn more about it and you'd like to co-present it up on panel with me, just let me know and we can do that. Or if you already know about it.
So you couldn't take in the love even though your mom loved you a lot?
Correct.
The entire 2015 interview with Beth is about an hour long. She goes on to say that what she went through is what allows her to remind others struggling with attachment disorders that there is hope. I'll link to its upload down below for those who are interested in hearing the whole thing. Whatever happened to Beth Thomas's little brother Jonathan is seemingly unknown. I found very little credible mention of him online. I can only hope that he found peace and recovery in this life. I can't imagine how going through what he went through affected him. The focus has always been on Beth's well-being, but we should remember that this is Jonathan's story too. He was a victim of his father and his sister, and God knows what the other kids in the house were like. There are some theories about John that I'd like to go over. I read several people claiming John was in prison in North Carolina for child trafficking, but I did some digging. They're referring to Jonathan Lynn Max Jenkins. I don't think this is Beth's brother. After all, John Jenkins is black. I've also heard people say John died of a heart attack. Well, I checked that out too. It seems they're referring to Jonathan Scott Thomas. He was, according to reports, a sports ref in Michigan. And to be fair, one look at his picture would make you do a double take. He does look like Beth Thomas's brother from the pictures all grown up. But he was born in 1988, so it couldn't be him. Coincidentally, though, his mother's name is Lori Beth Thomas. But again, that's just a coincidence. Nothing more. People have even gone as far as to claim that the home improvement actor Jonathan Taylor Thomas is Beth's brother. I can solve that one quickly for you too. Born in 1980. These are not the Johns we're looking for. John, if you're listening, myself and my whole channel wish you the very best. Reach out if you ever feel so inclined to tell your story. There is healing in both telling and hearing. This picture was also used on a few sites claiming that it's Beth's biological parents. I mean, it's obviously not, just look at the style, but I can also tell you exactly who's in this photo. Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson, with their daughter, Madison. They disappeared in 2009 near Red Oak, Oklahoma. Their remains were found in 2013. No cause of death or reason for their disappearance has ever been revealed. I'm not going to dive into this case right now, but I'd be curious to know if there are any ties to this case and serial killer Israel Keys. After all, I read he had connections in Oklahoma. He was only caught in 2012, and there was that one drawing he made that said, "We are one." Anyway, that's another episode. But again, that's not the end of the Beth Thomas story. There's another part to the darkness surrounding Beth's life, somewhat directly and somewhat indirectly. Sometime after young Beth's interview, she ended up being treated by a social worker named Connell Watkins, or Connell. I don't know. I don't care. To my knowledge, Beth never experienced anything negative in the hands of Watkins, but someone else did.
I do come in support of H. Con Res 435, the Candace Newmaker Resolution of 2002. I introduced this resolution in July to honor a little girl from North Carolina who lost her life tragically because of voodoo science called rebirthing. She was a beautiful 10-year-old girl, her whole life ahead of her, and she died tragically in April of 2000 because she was forced to take part in a rebirthing therapy session. Candace had been adopted out of the foster care system by a single woman, and like any child would, she missed her parents and her siblings, and her adoptive mother claimed that she and Candace were not bonding properly. Well, while searching the internet for help, Candace's adoptive mother discovered reactive attachment therapy. It's a disorder treatment, a clinical term for what folks see as a child's ability to bond with new adoptive parents. A therapist who never even met Candace diagnosed her with the disorder, and her mother took her to Colorado for treatment. A radical attachment disorder therapist was paid $7,000 for a 2-week course of treatment for Candace. This was not a licensed psychiatrist or a licensed psychologist. The supposed therapist's highest degree was a master's in social work. After a few days of other attachment therapy, the therapist thought that Candace was ready for the rebirthing therapy. This was supposed to simulate Candace's trip through the birth canal and would symbolically deliver her to her adoptive mother and erase her natural birth 10 years ago. The therapist and her assistant, along with 2 other helpers, wrapped Candace tightly in a flannel blanket and covered her with 8 cushions. Then the 4 adults put their combined weight of 673 pounds on Candace's 70-pound body, bounced on her and squeezed her to simulate contractions. During the 70-minute procedure, the adults taunted Candace to try to fight her way out of the cocoon. 10 minutes into the procedure, Candace begged to be let out because she could not breathe. Her sobs and her pleas were ignored, and she was even told to go ahead and die by the therapist. Candace continued to cry for her life for 30 more minutes. 40 minutes into the procedure, she spoke her last word, no. The adults continued to sit on her and taunt her for 30 more minutes. When they finally unwrapped Candace, she was dead. Her adoptive mother had witnessed the entire episode, and the therapist had even videotaped the procedure, which was used against her in a court of law. She and her assistant were convicted of reckless child abuse resulting in death and were sentenced to 16 years each. Colorado has since passed a law to outlaw this horrendous practice, and other states, including my state of North Carolina, will hopefully do so soon. The resolution I introduced, H. Con Res 435, was
Disturbing in so many ways. So many freaking ways.
would express the sense of Congress that this rebirthing therapy is dangerous and should be prohibited. This therapeutic technique is not recognized by any professional psychological groups, and many have specifically denounced the practice, including the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the Judge David Bazelon Center for Mental Health, and the National Council for Adoption. And I encourage all states to outlaw this voodoo science and prevent another tragedy from happening. Candace's grandparents, David and Mary Davis, who are my constituents and who are here today, have been tireless advocates for outlawing this procedure. They don't want their granddaughter to have died in vain. I ask my colleagues to join me in passing this resolution to ensure states to outlaw this procedure.
Connell Watkins and her death crew were tried and convicted of reckless child abuse resulting in death. They were sentenced to 16 years in prison, but Connell would only serve 7. Candace's law was signed in 2001 after the incident, banning all rebirthing therapy in the state of Colorado. Rest in peace, Candace Newmaker. Beth seemingly resides in Colorado with her family and appears to be doing quite well in life, even winning Nurse of the Year a while back. Her and Nancy Thomas both run an organization called Families by Design, where they claim to help parents and kids deal with struggles like the ones they faced. They truly do what appears on the surface to be good work for the world, and they seem to have a thirst for saving children and families that are struggling. I certainly hope that's the case. My only issue is that Watkins is never allowed to work with children again. And Nancy Thomas was a part of Connell Watkins and Associates at the time Candace was killed. But apart from previously being a dog trainer, I haven't seen any other qualifications listed for Nancy Thomas, though she does claim to have trained or worked with Neil Feinberg. But that's not very settling either. Apparently, his mentor was Connell Watkins. The videotapes shown of 10-year-old Candace Newmaker's treatment during the Connell Watkins trial are said to look eerily similar to this tape recorded in 1993, where you can see Neil Feinberg using techniques like HT. HT stands for holding therapy, also known as rage reduction therapy. This is where someone forcibly hugs or cuddles a child, often against their will, until they finally relent. It involves some other practices that are, let's say, quite triggering. Take a look.
What happened?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure. I gave up. How about I gave up? See, this is your life.
Yes.
This is your life. Where are your eyes supposed to be?
Yes.
This is your life. You going to fight for your family? You want to stay in this family or not? Or should we just give up now? What do you want to do? You want to give up? You want to whine and moan?
No.
Well, what is it? Yes or no?
No, Neil.
Then say it like you mean it.
No, Neil.
No, Neil, what? Oh, is this the kind of stuff that you do all the time, huh? I forgot. I don't know. Play stupid. Poor little Stevie. Huh? That's the kind of stuff. How'd it go last night for you?
Not good, Neil.
The way it usually goes, right? Because this is the way your life goes. How many times do you think I want to tell you to look in my eyes, huh? How many times do people have to tell you to do things? Oh, I don't know, Neil. How you feeling right now? How'd you feel last night, huh?
Scared.
Scared? Did you act scared? When Mom told you not to come out of your room, what did you do? You're going to go into your whiny, wimpy routine now? Is that what you're going to do? If you don't start dealing with the man inside of you, you're going to kill somebody. Do you understand that?
Yes, Neil.
How often do you think about killing your mother? How often do you think about killing your mother? When I ask you a question, I expect you to respond. Got it?
Got it.
Got it?
Got it.
I didn't like that. Got it. I want it louder and snappier. Got it?
Got it.
How often do you think about killing your mother, Stevie?
Often.
Thank you. So you say that in a full sentence.
I feel I don't like killing my mother often.
What? Do I want mumbling here? Kick. I don't want you to mumble in here.
Yes,
I agree.
Got it?
Got it.
Got it?
Got it.
How you feeling right now?
Scared.
Do I want one-word answers in here?
No, Neil.
No. I don't want one-word answers. Got it?
Got it.
How do you feel about me being the boss right now? Do you like other people being the boss of you?
No, Neil.
Say, I hate it.
I hate it.
Is that the truth?
Yes, Neil.
Then you say it like you feel it. I hate other people bossing me.
I hate other people bossing me.
Louder than that.
I hate other people bossing me.
Louder than that.
I hate other people bossing me.
Again.
I hate other people bossing me.
Kick hard. Stop kicking. I want a full sentence. Do you think about killing your mother a lot?
Yes, Neil.
Yes, Neil, what?
Yes, Neil, I do feel like telling my mother.
Do I want mumbling in here? Kick. You say ready, you be ready. Got it?
Got it!
I don't want wimpy kicking either. Kick. How you feel about me making you kick?
Mad? I feel mad, Neil.
Then say it like you feel it. It makes me mad.
It makes me mad!
Show me the mad.
It makes me mad!
I want to see you're mad. You show it to me. How mad are you?
I'm really mad, Neil!
Want to kill me?
Yes!
Then say it. Look at me. Look at me. Say I'd like to kill you, you motherfucker.
I like to kill you, you motherfucker!
In my eyes.
I like to kill you, you motherfucker!
Louder than that.
I like to kill you, you motherfucker!
Again.
I like to kill you, you motherfucker!
Open your eyes and look at me and say it.
I like to kill you, motherfucker!
Again.
I like to kill you, motherfucker!
When I say open your eyes, I mean open them. Got it?
Got it!
How do you feel?
Mad, Neil!
I'd like to kill you, right?
Right!
Say it.
I like to kill you, Neil!
Show me. Show me all the mad inside of you. Look at me. What do you want to call me right now, huh?
I jerk!
Louder than that.
Jerk!
Eyes open.
Jerk!
Again.
Jerk!
Louder than that.
Jerk!
Good. What would you like to do to me right now?
Hit you!
Where?
Anywhere, just so I can hit you!
Then you say it.
I wish I could hit you, Neil!
Again.
I wish I could hit you, Neil!
Eyes open.
I wish I could hit you, Neil!
Good. Again.
I wish I could hit you, Neil!
Because you argue with everybody about everything. Right?
Right!
Because you never accept responsibility for what you do or for what you feel. Right?
Right!
And that's got to change. If you want to go home, that has to change. Got it?
Got it!
So don't make the mistake of arguing with me in here. When I grab your mouth and do this, how do you feel?
Scared!
Well, you yell it at me. You're scaring me.
You're scaring me!
Again.
You're scaring me!
Stop kicking. Are you doing it my way? Are you doing just about everything that I tell you to do? Are you kicking when I tell you to kick? Are you?
Yes, Neil.
Are you stopping when I tell you to stop?
Yes, Neil.
Are you screaming at me louder when I say louder?
Yes, Neil.
Are you doing it my way?
I think so, Neil.
Did you die?
No, Neil.
Do you think you're gonna die? Truth is you do. Don't you?
I guess so, Neil.
So look at me and say, I just want to kill everybody.
I just want to kill everybody!
Again!
I just want to kill everybody!
In my eyes!
I just want to kill everybody!
Louder than that!
I just want to kill everybody!
Again!
I just want to kill everybody!
Again!
I just want to kill everybody!
All right, kick. I want to know 3 things that Mom did last night to piss you off. Got it?
Got it!
Is this going to take all day?
No, Neil.
Who takes all day to do things?
Me, Neil.
And why is...
When that happens, I will sit on the child. I have had to do this with dogs as well, and they are generally more dangerous with their teeth and claws than children. I pick a good book and read while I sit on a child, and that really seems to upset them because they feel that I should be miserable like they are. We have horses that we have the children ride. It's the same movement that a baby gets bouncing up and down. It's also very sexual, and for girls who have been sexualized, we find that we can replace the neighborhood boys with a horse. It's more socially acceptable and less expensive than pregnancy.
I mean, she's kind of starting to lose that hero vibe, if you ask me. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. There's a link in the description that lists all of Nancy's quoted methods in an effort to bring awareness to the dangers of these unconventional therapies, if you can even call them that. You know, I'm starting to think this all adds up nicely. The therapeutic abuse, the association to Connell Watkins, Beth's 2015 interview, and the phone call that I'm quite sure was Nancy Thomas. These attachment methods seem to be all about gaining control, and I'm not sure it's the right kind. Perhaps Beth is still under Nancy's control. Maybe this is why they took Beth away from Nancy's ranch in the 80s. Maybe this is why John wants nothing to do with the media, and perhaps this is why Beth and Nancy never mentioned John. Maybe the preacher and his wife saw something at that ranch that they just didn't approve of. Who knows? It's all speculation, but analyzing it all doesn't yield pretty findings. I came into this research at a completely different entrance. I totally sided with Nancy Thomas at the time, but now that I've looked into this more, while I definitely believe attachment disorders are very real and crucially need to be dealt with via awareness and real treatment, the attachment therapy practiced in this circle appears to be littered with child abuse. You can call this shit therapy all you want, but Nancy, a child was murdered at the company you worked with, and I haven't seen you condemn it. Furthermore, you're still practicing and preaching a lot of this evil. And that's what it is. I'd love to see the statistics and find out how many kids came through this therapy completely unscathed. This isn't scared straight, it's more like scared submission. If you're promoting and encouraging this shit, then you are an abuser. By your own admissions, Nancy Thomas, you are abusive. You can shove that power-pissing bullshit up your back hole. Maybe this is why Nancy wouldn't return my calls and messages. I'm glad she didn't, because it caused me to dig deeper, and that's how I found this information. Apart from what's in the book, which I've purchased, ordered, and will read and review at some point, what I've just shared is the story of Beth Thomas as we know it. I couldn't get Beth, or Nancy, or John, or the tenants, and Ken passed away years ago. But I still wanted to talk to someone about RAD that actually has qualifications to speak on it, and I found a doctor who was willing to do so. I won't be discussing everything I discussed above with the doctor. I'm going to stick mainly to reactive attachment disorder and Beth's original story. The reason is, as I stated above, I think every parent should know about RAD and other attachment disorders, even though I believe the treatment above is complete bullshit. If you're dealing with attachment issues in your child's life, seek the help of a qualified professional that won't force your kids to shit themselves for a PB&J sandwich. To sum up this part of the video, I want to state very clearly that 6-year-old Beth Thomas was not a psychopath. She was not evil, and she was not a monster. But that doesn't take away from the fact that John was a victim, and it doesn't make the abusive practices of attachment therapy any less deplorable. And I firmly stand my ground on that. Nancy, if you want to have a conversation and counter anything I said, or just set the record straight, you can find me right here. I'm Mr. Black, and this is The Disturbing Truth. The interview is up next.
She's done a lot of good work with you in therapy, with Canal and with Canal and with Canal and with Canal. And
Someone please come to my defense.
I think I'll stop it right there. But if you want to hear some good cases, you might check out The Disturbing Truth with Mr. Black. I mean, that channel is pretty good. I used to watch it a lot, and he does good work. I mean, what do y'all think about all this stuff that you heard today? Do you believe that the attachment disorder is a thing? Do you think that it's just an excuse? Do you think it's, I mean, being exposed to that line of work and everything, and as well as studying and stuff, even though I haven't really deep dove into it, I believe it's a thing. I do. And it's just so sad that many kids appear to have this in society today. It's really. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Aquarius. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. I'm like, whoa. Like the first time I heard him, I was like, man, this dude has a distinctive voice, and it's like no other voice I've ever heard on YouTube. It's interesting for sure. I like it. Love issues, yeah. Peggy says she believes it is real. Yeah, I mean, because being neglected or abused early on in life can create that attachment issue between you and your caregivers. And there's even been studied that if a baby is left alone, unattended, not held, nothing, that baby can die. Look into it if you don't believe me. Yeah, Bill Curtis is another good one. There's a lot of fascinating things that happen due to being human, and many people don't believe it. They think that just because they're grown up or they grew up and they were able to manifest through those times and they didn't die, just like I said, and they were raised in those type of environments, doesn't make them the exception to the rule. it's very traumatic. And I thank all of you that have shared your experiences in the chat. I would suggest that if this video triggered anything in you, that you find someone to talk to. You might even look into maybe going to therapy or going back to therapy if you haven't. I know when I was going to therapy, I always talked down about it, even though I was a therapist at the time. Imagine that. Imagine the irony, right? It's good enough for you, but it's not good enough for me. Isn't that how it usually works? But anyways, it's about humbling yourself to the point that, like they said in this video, admitting that there is a problem. And number two, that you want to do something about the problem. Because we can't fix ourselves no matter how hard we try. We can't. You know? Yeah, I agree with you. That therapy was very disturbing. Yeah, you're true. That's true, Latina. That's very true. Do y'all have any questions? Any comments before I close this out? So many children being abused in so many ways is so disturbing. That is so true, Becky. Peggy. That's so true. And welcome again to the channel. Thank you for being a first timer, and I hope that you enjoy what you see and hear here. I do warn you that if you do go back and watch some other videos, there's some times when there's some unflattering language or even stuff that you might see or hear in there, but I take it to light that you are an adult and you will be able to make it through it, you know. I run a different kind of true crime channel than all the other ones that are out there right now in the true crime community. Mine are more in your face, kind of reality based, you know, and that's all I got to say about that. But thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you continue to come back. This is a good place to be. And the rest of you, thank you for so much for showing up and giving me your love on this Sunday, your attention on this Sunday, and truth, I will check out some of those suggestions that you put on there. Y'all be good out there, and remember that there's nothing better than healing from something that you've been hanging on to for a long time. And we can't do it alone, and sometimes we need to find some assistance along the way. Free your mind, your heart, and everything else will follow. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you again soon.
Run free and dive into the sky. Hear the wind crying out its prayer. Why are we so ashamed to be alive? Break the chains and our freedom's ours to take. Look behind your back. Chase a light when the world is getting darker. I have a dream where love's the only side. So take my hand, join the army of the side.